So one of the first things we want to do when we're undertaking a renovation, if there's any concerns at all about the energy efficiency of the house, is to do an energy evaluation including a fan door test. The principle here is that we're going to exhaust air out of the house at a measured, rapid rate. And it's done at a consistent rate throughout all the houses that are tested, so we kind of have a benchmark to know how houses perform. And what we find when the air is exhausted rapidly, the house has to draw air in from outside somehow. So it'll do that through all the cracks and holes that exist. And we'll go around and observe those and make notes and determine where we should pay attention to draft sealing or replacing windows and doors or taking other measures. We'll fire the fan up now and exhaust air, and then we'll start checking for leakage around the house. Is that this house is so leaky that we have to put the fan at its maximum aperture to exhaust as much air as possible, as rapidly as possible, in order to make up for the air that's leaking in. So that tells us we're into a house here that's going to have a very poor Energuide rating as it sits, and lots of room for improvement. So we're just going to do a demonstration here with the house under pressure. And again, this is artificially high pressure, but it does demonstrate where the leakage occurs. So I'll light a match and hold it against the glass, which doesn't leak, and then move it towards the edge of the window where we are feeling leaks, and you'll see the effect of the match. No leakage there, and you can see the air coming in there. One of the places we find a surprising amount of leakage is around electrical outlets and switches. And you'd think those would be worse on the outside walls, but they're actually worse on the inside walls of the house. The reason is the outside walls tend to have plastic boots behind the outlets, at least in more modern houses they do. And then of course it's packed with insulation around that, so that reduces the air movement on outside walls through these openings. As with many older homes, along came aluminum windows in the 1960s and 70s, and homes were upgraded with those. So while they did allow a nice thin frame profile for more light into the house, the aluminum conducts cold and heat very well. So in our heating season, and even our shoulder seasons, the aluminum will feel cold to touch because it's conducting cold in or heat out, I suppose, more correctly. And then of course the weather stripping is not to nearly the same standard as modern windows, and it is often very worn. So we definitely want to replace these single glazed aluminum windows. So here's an obvious place of leakage we're all familiar with around doors. Doors are pretty well impossible to seal perfectly airtight, although very high-end doors do offer that possibility. This door has rather tattered weather stripping, but even where the weather stripping is intact and looks good, you can still see light coming through here. And even with the door pressed into place, we still have that problem. So this is a simple thing that can be addressed that will help a great deal. The other thing is here we look on the floor and you see a bit of a mess. That's just because when we started to extract the air from the house, the leaky attic hatch allowed a whole bunch of insulation to fall down onto the floor of the house. It's just been literally sucked into the house because that attic hatch leaks quite a bit. This is just an indication, again, another graphic indication of just how leaky a house can be, and you don't even suspect it. As I come close to this fireplace, I can feel a lot of draft here, and that's normal. Often with these retrofitted fireplaces, there's a great deal of leakage around them. The unfortunate thing is that the leakage is worst on the windiest, coldest days of the year. So they are a definite energy loss depending on how the installation is performed at the coldest times of the year. I also feel quite a draft coming up from the floor. That's because, as you'll see when we go to the basement, it's a very leaky basement. And so that air is getting up through the floor system around the fireplace. Again, that's typically a place where there's a lot of air leakage in clean houses. So as we've said, we think there's a lot of leakage in the basement. And here's an indication. I feel a very strong draft here coming out the basement door into the kitchen. So I'll just demonstrate though for you just how much air is coming in there. A lot of leakage down there. So here's an example of what we'll often find in older homes. Sometimes it's hidden by wall paneling or finishing inside, but these conditions exist where there are just gaps around pipes and fittings and wires through the walls of the house. And it all adds up to more leakage in the house.